Today we're going to completely go through this STIHL RZ 760K from the top to bottom, show you everything about it. This is a demo model from Ace Hardware in Bay City, Michigan. The one thing that I need you to note is that they have kind of changed this slightly to kind of bridge between their 500 series and 900 series. The 500 and 700 series do not have suspension seats. The 900 series does have a suspension seat, and it also takes a big price jump. So Unclaimed Freight in Bay City added a suspension seat to kind of say, hey, we can bridge that gap with a $250 suspension seat, but it raises the seat 3 inches, and it may not work for everyone, and I don't know that this particular suspension seat helps with the ride. So I'm gonna leave that suspension seat completely out of this review. I need you to ignore that it's there and imagine myself sitting approximately 2 inches lower. So once I sit in the seat, it'll go down an inch, and that will change a little bit of how the handles are to give me a little bit more leg room. But as we're going through it, delete the suspension seat because it's something you could add, but if you're going to add one, I'd suggest you just buy the seat and the suspension system from the 900 and add it to this. I think you would be a lot more happy. This STIHL machine is built by Briggs & Stratton, and if you're familiar with the Ferris models, it's going to be very, very similar to that. Independent front suspension and independent rear suspension. The suspension is connected to the deck. So if the suspension raises, the deck raises. So we don't have scalping issues with this at all. It gets to a very beefy system on the 700s and even more beefy on the 900s. Lots of good commercial stuff in this, including LED lights. You have a great system here that has a nice rubber flap, so you can run this into trees. You're not going to bend or break that. We have a 10 gauge deck on the bottom, and then we have a dual layer of the 10 gauge metal wherever the spindles are at. We're going to take a complete look at that deck at the bottom and on top. Everything on here is greasable, which is a complete change from what you might see in other models, but this thing has more grease zerks on it than most heavy-duty pickup trucks. If we take a look at the rear of this, we have some great tubular bumpers in the back. We have a lot of room around this Kawasaki engine. We also have our rear shock absorbers. Now these shock absorbers are adjustable basically for preload, so they'll stiffen up. They're not going to raise the machine up or anything, but they will stiffen up. If you have a spanner wrench, you can just adjust these and they just spin this bottom chrome around and they will get a little more stiff. Obviously, the faster you go, the stiffer you'd like to have them. I have them all set in the softest right now, and I'll tell you, this thing rides like a dream. Before we get too far into this, I want to show you the inside, or the guts per se, of the STIHL. Everything is accessible from the 2 hydraulic system reservoirs. So the hydraulic system is completely separated on this, like you would see on many other zero-turn mowers, and you can maintenance them and get at everything easy. You can see the fans on the top, right out in the open. Easy to get to, easy to work on. All your dampeners, all your springs for the reverse, everything here is easy to get to and easy to work on. I think that is one thing that I've seen on this machine that separates it from almost every other machine out there. Let's start with the cockpit of this machine. Lots of room. If you're tall, you can get the seat back far enough, it works. If you're shorter, the seat is adjustable. You can get it up far enough where everything fits perfectly. Now I need you to remember, I'm up 2 inches because of the suspension seat that is not included, and I don't think that having that 2 inches of height really helps. For me, again, I think I would be happier a little bit lower, but these can be raised up a little bit. They can be moved back. They can be adjusted to however you'd like them. I think that is great. The brake is right here. This is super easy brake. There is nothing to it. Move it forward, that allows you to push everything forward and backward. Now these handles in reverse will come back to the neutral position, and in forward they will slowly come back, but they'll hold. Very easy to work one-handed. They're a little bit stiffer than other models that I've used, but you'll quickly get used to that. There needs to have a little bit of grease on this one, evidently. Is it squeaky? But you have adjustments complete. If you want these to come in further, there's a bolt in the lock nut down here that you can adjust that. If you want them to stick out farther, you can adjust that. Everything can be adjusted very, very easily here. Deck lift is the right pedal. It will automatically lift into the travel position. And again, good positioning. It doesn't feel like it's coming back too far on me. Everything there is nice and smooth. Deck height, and this is adjustable from 1.5 inches all the way up to 5 inches. And basically we have a magnetic pin that holds it into place. We can drop this in just about anywhere we'd like. You can hear it kind of magnetize itself into place, and that pin is not going to come out. This little handle here is the lock into place. If you were to push that forward, you move this over to the right, and that will drop the deck down to whatever setting you have it on. To continue with the adjustability, we can micro adjust, per se, the deck leveling. The height in front, the height in back, the height side to side. We can do this with this bolt and lock nut. There is a lot of this on this that you don't see on other machines, so if you want to get this absolutely perfect, you can. On the right hand side, we have a bulk of all the controls. We have a switch to turn the LED lights that are on up front, PTO. We have a multi-function hour meter that's going to tell you the engine hours and the PTO hours, so you can tell exactly how much this has been used in both settings. Butter smooth throttle with a detent that's all the way forward. Love the throttle. In this case, we have a choke because it's a carbureted engine, and then our key. But this Kawasaki engine starts wonderful. Now we also have a fuel tank gauge. We have this on the right and left hand side. So this is the right hand fuel tank gauge, and we have the right hand fuel tank fill in the back. Left hand side is pretty basic. We have 2 cup holders, one that's a little bit larger that would hold a tumbler, one that's a little bit smaller for a can. Left side fuel tank gauge, fuel tank fill, and then we have 2 3-amp USB outlets that are here. So if you want to charge your phone, whatever you're going to do with that, they are there. Located just behind the seat, we have a fuel shutoff. So we can turn our fuel off to the engine if we'd like to, or we have to choose right or left-hand tanks. You cannot run both at the same time. Underneath the operating station, you have full access to the drive belts, and you can grease all your spindles. Now these are a cast iron spindle. We're going to get into more of that in a little bit, but it gives you the opportunity to also see STIHL's dual belt system. So we have multiple belts in here that's supposed to reduce the amount of pressure and fatigue that the belts go through in use and kind of just spread it out. So it's interesting to watch this. Now, I might have a belt that is slightly off here. There's a small vibration that I'm getting from the idler arm or the tensioner that is on this side. When I turn it on, especially if you idle it down, what you would expect, it moves around, but I can feel it moving around a little bit as I'm going through some of the grass. The clip I'm showing you is just trying to point out what idling arm I'm pointing to. It's fairly normal, but I can actually feel that while I'm driving around the machine. Accessing this stuff is super easy, and I like that this goes in and is tight. There's nothing here that's going to vibrate, and we do have rubber on the top for our feet, so we don't slide around and we're not just sitting ourselves on some slippery powder coat. I like that a lot. This machine has the Kawasaki FX801V. That Kawasaki engine is 852 cc's, and it is used on multiple different machines in the 25 and 27 horsepower models. A lot of commercial machines use this. Very good quality engine, very easy to work on in here. Lots of room to get around and see everything, adjust anything up if need be. And our air filter is also separate, so we have our intake. Again, nice air filter, easy to get to, and it also has another blue filter on the inside. So you're getting a lot of quality air filtering through there if you were using this in a lot of dusty areas. This is more what we see in heavy equipment in probably side-by-sides. Very easy to check your oil or do anything else that you would need to before you're using this for the day. Again, everything is easily accessible. Looking underneath the machine is a little bit more exciting to me, and if you're into a little more heavy-duty beefy machine, you can see why it's exciting to me. Now we we have a round bar that's down here. Instead of just some sheet metal that's protecting our hydro drives, this bar is going to hit something and pick the machine up, not allow you to dent or get into these hydro drives a bit. That to me is awesome, and it shows kind of the build quality as to how they're making this whole system come together and be really tight and strong with the full suspension, which changes up the whole frame of this machine. We have Hydrogear ZT4400s in here. These things rock, fully able to be serviced. We have our filters on here. We can drain everything, add any oil we need from the top. It's wonderful. Clutch system up top. This is going to turn our deck. We have one belt that's going there, and then we have another belt that is above it that is going to drive our Hydrogear transmissions. See, I'm probably getting excited about the stuff that a lot of people don't. Underneath here, we have Marbane hardened blades. These should last you longer than any of the normal blades out there. Obviously, probably going to be a little bit more expensive to replace also. Cast iron spindles, large spindles. And again, on top, this is a 10 gauge deck, but we have dual layer of that 10 gauge over the spindles where it counts. Now, to me, fully baffled. So all this blades are going to cut awesome because they have the lift. You have the area that you're going to tear this grass up inside here and then move it out. It's also fully set up if you wanted to bring in and put a mulching kit on, which in my case would have been awesome because it's really hard with this mower or any other ones with side discharge to go through and go around all the landscaping. We also have a lot of gussets that are inside here. So while this deck is 10 gauge, we have gussets that are stiffening this deck up all over the place, front and back, and we have a skid plate in back that's going to help protect anything if you were to back up on anything. Anti-scalping wheels are only up front. If we look at this from the front, we have a 1/2 inch piece of metal that's welded on, all on top, that it goes all the way around the deck and wraps around to the back. It does not go across the back section here. But this is another part of reinforcing this deck to make it very strong. So this is a beefy unit. You can step on the deck. When you sit down, you know that you're in a larger unit. I can't say this for sure, but with this suspension seat, I feel like the seat's tilted back just a little bit too much for me, but very comfortable. Love how everything operates. The one thing that I dislike is they have a rubber pad on this deck. So when you get off, my natural placement is right up front. When I get on, I want to step up front. The rubber pad is off to the back. That makes it okay for me to get on because I have this handle I can grab onto. But to get off, I'd have to get all the way around. So I wish they would have just put another rubber pad right up here on the front. I mowed with this zero turn all over the place, and I took it to one of our commercial jobs. And in that job, I'm up on 3 wheels a lot of the times. There's some stumps that I got to mow around. There's some curbs, a lot of different places where it's just not level. But it's a totally different game when you have 4-wheel suspension. I was able to drive into some areas and get into some really awkward positions where I would have normally been on 3 wheels and sliding around, where this machine made me feel 100% comfortable to drive right through there. Never lost traction, had a blast doing so, and could move this wherever I wanted to without a struggle or without getting stuck. A lot of times you'll get to a point where you want to turn and you'll spin a wheel if you're off center because it'll be lifted off the ground more. Not the case with this, and that's not to say you can't get this up on 3 wheels. It only has so much suspension. But man, I'll tell you, it has so much suspension that in normal cutting situations, you won't go up on 3 wheels and you will have all the traction and the ability to move around effortlessly, which to me is a game changer. That is what I absolutely adore about this machine. Running it through grass out on an open field where you can just fly up and down the lawn, it just soaks the bumps up, gives you a very comfortable ride. It's amazing. It's hard to imagine driving something without this kind of suspension. That's the reality of the game. There is no bouncing around. There's very little vibration, it just simply goes and allows you to go faster than you probably normally would because you don't feel the bumps. You don't feel anything that's going on around you. You're just driving. And the cut quality is really, really good. It's as good as the Exmark Laser series, in my opinion, because you have all that baffling and it allows you to pull that grass up, cut it good, not leave any stragglers, and mulch it up a bit before it heads out the side of the chute. Everything that I did with this mower, it just continued to say, hey, give me more, give me more, give me more. Now in some of the deep grass, which there wasn't like deep grass, but there was some areas of thick, wet grass that I was cutting. And let me tell you, this grass is wet. We had a ton of rain yesterday and I did not wait for anything. I got up and started mowing lawn. And that's why we're getting some of these windrows. But when I dropped down, I normally cut it 4.5 inches. So the grass had grown quite a bit. And then I dropped this down to 3.5, just to say, how is it going to handle cutting that much thick grass? At that point in time, the 60-inch deck to me with the Kawasaki 25.5 horsepower motor felt slightly underpowered. Now, granted, I've been driving the 35 horsepower models around lately, testing them out, and that could be partially where I'm getting that from. I would love to have more horsepower, but again, I think you're going to be pretty well set for this as long as you're not doing a lot of really wet, really thick mowing and expecting the side discharge just to chew it all up and not lay it out there. Wet, thick, long grass is not going to blend itself back in very easily. All I had to do was go over it a little bit the second time and I was able to spread it out, no problem. If you need that more horsepower for that type of equipment, in my opinion, take a look at the 900 series. That 960, the 972 are absolutely stellar, but you're taking a huge jump in MSRP. So here are a few things that I'm going to show you that I can't actually explain why they're this way. Now there's grease zerks all over the place with this suspension. There's a ton of them. When you get this, look at the manual, buy a good grease gun, get some good grease and enjoy it. This thing is amazing with grease zerks and it'll help you make this machine last. But up front here, we have a bolt where a grease zerk normally would be. My assumption is that you'd pull this out and then maybe screw in your own grease zerk or use a grease needle to grease these. But these are going to be sealed bearings, so if you never grease them, it's probably not that big of a deal, although it would help keeping some of the moisture out. Number two, I was told that we have cast iron spindles here, which we do, and they are all greasable. Now, interestingly enough, what I was told is that they're sealed bearings on the inside. So if you grease them or not, they'll probably last the same amount of time, although being cast iron and everything else, it would be nice to have some grease in there to help stop any of the rust or any type of the condensation to get in there and rust things up. So a little bit of grease is going to help. It's just interesting to me that we don't have tapered bearings in there and we have grease zerks. Interesting. 900 series has tapered bearings, so make sure if you do have the 900 series that you definitely do grease that because those will take it and need it. Another thing that you see everywhere are Heim joints. Everywhere. All over the suspension. And I think that's great. It wouldn't hurt to keep these clean and to also keep them lubricated. If these ever got sloppy, they're not going to be that hard to replace, but if you put a little lubrication on them, it'll help them with their longevity. Here's my take on this. If you're questioning the STIHL lawnmower at all and saying, well, this just came out not too long ago, what about this piece? What's going to happen there? I'm going to urge you to kind of Google Ferris's machines and look at the ones that are going to be similar to these models, built in the same factory, built by Briggs & Stratton. You just can get through that machine and say, wow, a lot of people love them. A lot of people think they're some of the best mowing machines out there. And as far as ride quality, I think they are. So it gives you a place to go look to say, hey, how's this going to last long term? What's going to happen with this after 1,000 hours? To me, I don't have a Ferris dealer in my area, but I do have a great STIHL dealer. And that's going to allow me to have all the parts I need and allow me to run these great mowers, which I think is a huge benefit. Go to your dealer, look at the demos. I encourage you to not only drive some of these machines around, sit on them, move them around. If you get a chance to take one and mow with it, do it. That's how you're going to learn what you like, what you dislike, where you want to be, and what model you're going to end up with. I can tell you a lot of different things about this machine, but driving it is going to be where you're going to find out what you like. And I think what you like as far as lawnmowers is more important than what I like. And while you're out there looking at all these machines and figuring out what you like, my suggestion to you, fold the ROPS down on these machines. Take a look at it. That's kind of one of those things. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you can see how well they're built, if they'll rattle, how they go up, if things are in line with each other. There's a lot of things you can find on build quality just by folding down the ROPS. Also, I'd highly suggest that you look at how the mowers are put together. See if they're welded all the way around or if they're just welded in certain areas where they're bent and need to be welded. In this case, you got full welds everywhere that there are two pieces connected. There's no areas where they're just sitting there next to each other and not welded. There's a lot of great things in this steel. And there are some things obviously that I went over that might not fit everyone as they want. But I think it's a great mower overall, and I think they put a lot of quality parts and pieces inside this. I think that's what takes this to the next level, even down from their small 152 model that I did a review of 3-4 weeks ago. That model surprised the heck out of me for what it was. This commercial model gave me pretty much the same surprise and the same feeling that I have the ability to do whatever I need to with this machine, and the confidence because I had the traction and I could go faster because I had all the suspension. Very important. If you have any questions, leave them below. I'll try to get on that, answer them as quickly as I can. Please give us a like in this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.